Hello. I hear you.
I can hear.
I can hear myself on stream. A similar problem from last week. It's great to have this back. Hello, everyone. I am Grog, and these are my friends Trevor Pence and Pez here. We're having some slight technical issues as Trevor's microphone is once again not working.
I think
We can.
we are working now. It reset itself again for some reason. Not quite sure. But nonetheless,
Yeah,
hiccup
can't
aside,
stream.
we are back for session 7 here of our Mummy the Curse Chronicle, Oceans of Eternity. We are joined today with some of my good friends. Although we are absent one for the time being, Zavlus is running a bit late here, but he will join us later. But we're going to start without him. And again, just starting with a bit of a recap of our last session. Our mummies, Armaret, Seshet, Darmos, and Nesret, had just reclaimed their tomb from a fiend and had restored some of its functionality by installing the strange relic they had found on the island as the harmonic centerpiece of the tomb's life web. Seshet had received an invitation to meet with the White Jackal of the Kentenu at the Palace of Antiochus. Seshet and Nesret, drained from their previous adventures, meditated in the tomb to recharge the pillars of their soul. Tamos, still troubled by the unfamiliar tools on display in his personal chamber, decided instead of meditating to take another look, hoping to stir up a memory. The plan worked, and Tamos recognized the tools as implements of slavery. He recalled that the empire of Arem had been built on the backs of slaves, and the Roman Empire of this age was no different. He recalled that his cults had often drawn from the ranks of slaves. They were innocuous. They were obedient. He offered them a chance to serve a higher purpose, but recalling the fear in his cultists' eyes, including Vitalius, perhaps they had merely traded one master for another. Tamos resolved to do better and sought out medical help for his inheritor. Father Vatatzis claimed to know a doctor that might be able to help, and wandered off to find a runner to send word for help before returning. Later, rejuvenated from their meditation, the rest of the Meret emerged from the tomb. Seshet, bold as always, went off to meet with the White Jackal alone. Nesret sat down with Father Vatatzis and Minervina to discuss the strange holy text that he had found in his personal chamber, as well as the strange new religion of Christianity that had taken the empire by storm. Nesret eventually shifted to talk of his own religion, the faith of Arem, of their ancient and nameless gods. But he began a sermon of sorts in an effort to convert Father Vatatzis and Minervina. Nesret made some progress on that front, but Father Vatatzis would not entertain the thought any longer. However, Minervina wished to hear more. She was curious. So she and Nesret went on a bit of a moonlit stroll along the streets of Constantinople. The stroll ended at the Augustion, in full view of the Hagia Sophia, where a memory resurfaced. Nesret recalled a time when the city was burning, and just as his heart burned with fury against this new Christian faith, he stood in this very same square and set fire to a church here. Though the original church he remembered is absent, long gone, A basilica far grander, far more magnificent than the one he set aflame had taken its place. Meanwhile, Seshet talked her way past the guards at the palace of Antiochus and found the white jackal in the courtyard, staring at the city. Seshet, upon seeing the jackal's face, recognized him, remembering that they were perhaps once allies in another distant descent. The white jackal revealed that he had taken somewhat of an active hand in the construction of the city, and he aimed to turn the resurgent Eastern Roman Empire into a new Arisen. The white jackal asked Seshet to join him in this endeavor as an ally, but gave her time to consider the request. He invited her to join him in the hippodrome for the races tomorrow, so that they might discuss these matters further. But before we get to that endeavor, let us return to Tamos as the doctor arrives to treat Vitalis. So, at this point, Minervina and Nesret have left. It's just you and other Tatsis and the sleeping form of Vitalius, as well as the cat that's been kind of nestled up next to the small fire you have going in the hearth of this dilapidated manor. And with that, you hear the arrival, the sounds of footsteps on stone, and you turn to see the arrival of this doctor, a bit ragged, a bit out of breath. Perhaps he's run here from some distance, and he's perhaps a bit younger than you might have expected. He's a Greek man, maybe in his early, perhaps mid-20s, and he's kind of hastily donned a kind of rather plain sort of brown tunic, and you can see that it's kind of stained in places. Though it's been washed, you can tell that not all of the mishaps, shall we say, have been quite so thoroughly cleaned out of the garment. Some things linger. And in one hand he has his lamp to help light his way, and the other he has this kind of large satchel, presumably of tools, and he kind of like half peeks into the manor, kind of slows his pace as he approaches, and in that split second before his eyes meet yours, he's a bit confused, a bit perplexed, perhaps, that someone would call him out to a house call in a seemingly abandoned manner, but his eyes kind of light up as he spies Father Vitatzis, who is kind of half awake, half asleep, reclining against a column, a pillar in the manor. The young man, upon seeing the good priest, kind of relaxes a bit, and kind of carefully makes his way in. He makes a point of trying to step around some of the bits of rubble and detritus before making his way into sort of the living room, I guess you would say, that we find ourselves in. And he kind of looks at Father Vitatzis, gives him a warm smile, and gives a kind of quick furtive glance at you, Tomos, and the patient. And he turns to Father Vatatzes, and the doctor just says, "Forgive me, Father. I came as fast as I could. I presume this is the patient." And you see kind of Vatatzes kind of shake off the lingering aura of fatigue for a moment. He's like, yes, yes, of course. Forgive me for calling you out so dreadfully late, but it's a bit of an emergency, I guess you would say. And he kind of makes a furtive glance towards you, Tomos. And the doctor kind of looks at you for a moment before kneeling down to sort of start assessing the patient, as it were. And he kind of zones in, kind of focusing in on the patient, but he keeps talking, but his eyes are clearly on target, shall we say. And as he begins his examination, he's like, "Is this a friend of yours, Father?" And the priest kind of just throws up a hand. He's like, not exactly. And kind of gestures towards you, Tomos. And the doctor kind of pauses for a moment and looks at you, and he says, "Forgive me. Bit of a... Where are my bedside manners? My name is Eutropius. Eutropius Ypsilantis. My apologies for the condition of your... presuming your friend here. Can you tell me what happened?"
Good to meet you. You can call me Tomos. As for my friend, Vitalis, well, I haven't... Let's just say it's been a while since I've been in contact with him, but I had sought him out recently, and, well, he had been attacked by a gang of ruffians over the course of a few weeks. Kept him hostage. I managed to free him, but he's in pretty bad shape, as you can tell.
That much is evident, and he kind of like lifts up an arm a bit and kind of notice it, wiggles it a bit, and you see his expression kind of dour a bit, not exactly pleased with what he's seeing, though you don't per se share the same eye that he does for such things. You are no doctor. But Eutropius kind of continues his examination, working his way down Vitalius, and he kind of takes the lamp that he's holding. He's like, "Father, could you hold this for me?" And Vatatzes kind of grabs it and kind of does his best to kind of provide what illumination he can to help the doctor in his work. And he, looking at you again, "Tomos, could you help me undress him?" And kind of motions to his shirt, trying to get to some of the injuries, a better view, shall we say.
Thomas will nod and begin assisting as best he can.
All right, you kind of lift him up, and they kind of wiggle the shirt off, and it's not a pretty sight beneath his tunic. You can see some very large, very like purple, blue, blackish bruises covering his chest, and you hear a bit of an audible gasp from Father Vatatzes, but Eutropius doesn't seem phased per se by such an injury. You get the impression that he's seen much worse. And kind of continues his examination. And while this is going on, Eutropius kind of goes quiet for a bit as he kind of thoroughly inspects the injuries, kind of starts poking and prodding, starts like rustling around in his satchel for instruments, leaving you kind of a bit in the dark as to what's going on and what Vitalius's condition is. Do you say anything in this sort of silence while you're waiting for some news or something, or you just kind of let the doctor work in silence?
After a while, curiosity gets the better of him, and he'll ask, "May I ask your assessment of his condition?"
Well, it's not great, shall we say. And let's just say it's a good thing that you called me when you did. If he had been left in this condition for much longer, let's just say that if he were to heal from this, it wouldn't, shall we say, heal properly. And he kind of motions to you for a moment to kind of help prop up the unconscious Vitalius. And he kind of like instructs you, like, oh, just hold him there, for a moment. And you see him kind of like grab his chest with one hand and like his with the other kind of pushing on his shoulder blade, and you see him kind of like wiggle around for a bit, and suddenly there's a very sharp, very sudden thrust of his palm, and you hear this like audible kind of sickening pop as his shoulder kind of slides back into place, and you see like an instinctive kind of jolt from Vitalius, and he kind of like blinks for a bit before kind of fading back off into sleep, or perhaps somewhat comatose state he's fallen into. And in the silence following this very audible pop of the doctor resetting Vitalius's shoulder, he kind of looks at you again and he says, I can... There's some things that I can do in the here and now, but a lot of these wounds are, well, old. There's not much I can do here now. He needs more long-term care, bed rest, supervision, that sort of thing. Listen. I came here because father here has been kind to me, let's just say. And I don't normally make house calls in the middle of the night. That's not typically my thing. But there's a limit to kindness. I may be a doctor, but I can't feed myself. I can't feed Alexia, for that matter, on kindness alone. And she kind of looks about at the dilapidated manor that you find yourselves in, and he perhaps makes an assumption, true or not, that you get the impression, shall we say, that he doesn't think you have the means to pay him, given that it's been a favor, called on by a priest, and you're like squatting in this building. But Eutropius says, consider this the extent of my charity. I'll do what I can for him in the here and now. Set what I can, suture what I can, but he needs more than that. At least if you want him on his feet anytime soon, that is.
Can you give him that care?
I can. Though...
I know what you're thinking. Let me assure you that your assumption is not entirely correct. If it is all right with you, I would like you to take Vitellius into your care. As for payment, well, I can give you payment by the end of the week. Or perhaps, or in addition to, I can also perform any favors you may need. Particularly of any that require, shall we say, more discreet handling. But if your concern is compensation, I can assure you I can get you what you need. My only request is you take my companion and treat him as best to your ability.
Well, that's the first time I've been offered to, been paid in such, unique, methods.
I'm a very
Leave it at that.
strange individual, let's put it that way.
I can appreciate a favor, but favors don't exactly put food on the table. But the care that you're requesting, I can provide, but there's a matter of location, I suppose. House calls aren't exactly, well, my thing.
Would he be better off closer to where you live?
If home care is what you desire, that's something I can make arrangements for. If you need something more discreet, private setting, I suppose. But such work would pull me away from my position, and would need to be compensated adequately, of course. Though, if you need something a bit more reasonable, shall we say, you might bring him to the Veiltudinaria, the military hospital. I might be able to attend to them there alongside my other patients.
I'm sorry, that's out of the question. Let's just say I don't trust them over there quite as much. As for your compensation, I assure you once again, I will compensate you for your work. So I am asking you, please take my companion, and I will compensate you for your time and effort.
All right. I suppose I can do that. I'll need to make some arrangements, of course. I'll need to inform my employer and my fellow doctors at the hospital. Make arrangements. But yes, of course, assuming that you are willing to pay, I'm willing to
More
render
than willing.
services of such sort. Oh, well,
If you're concerned about carrying him, I can do that myself. Just show me where he'll be resting.
well, I assume you don't want him here. And he kind of like
No.
gestures like towards like an open like a hole in the
No.
wall. You have like the cold draft like running in. He's like, it's
No.
not exactly ideal conditions here for bed rest. I suppose we can. If you don't have anywhere else in mind, I suppose I can take him back to my residence. Though
I will compensate you for that as well.
I certainly appreciate the help carrying him. I'm how to say, it was hard enough running all the way over here across town in the middle of the night. Let's just say patient transport would be a bit tricky by myself.
I can handle it.
Well, let me do what I can to restrain the patient here, and we can head off. If there's anything else you have left to do here, otherwise, kind of gives like a nod to where Batatsi is. As he's kind of trying to like wrap Vitalius, up in like a sheet, trying to make him a bit more compact, a little easier to carry, hopefully. Don't want any limbs like slipping out and flailing about as you transport him. But he bids farewell to Father, and the priest says his farewells as well. And you get the implication that they have some sort of warm history. And again, Vatatsi's kind of apologizes for dragging him out in the middle of the night. But nonetheless, is there anything else that you wanted to do here in the manor above your tomb, or are you ready to?
No, not at the moment. I just rather get him to an actual bed.
All right. So, with that, Vitalius sort of restrained as best as possible. You and Eutropius take the patient, you take Vitalius through the streets of Constantinople, making your way to his residence. And it's a bit of a trek, shall we say, especially considering you're carrying an extra body on you. It's hard to set a speedy pace, shall we say. Best to take it just take it slow, considering the patient you have in tow. But nonetheless, as the night drags on, you eventually find yourself at the threshold to the Ypsilantis residence. And as you stand at the door, Eutropius kind of does his best to like hand Vitalius like the full weight over to you, that he might, kind of fumbles with his keys and goes to open the door to his residence. It's, given everything that you've seen thus far, it's a rather moderate residence, sort of quite solidly middle class. Nothing too fancy, though it is certainly more than a hovel or some box on the street. A modest home, shall we say. And as he fumbles with the key and begins to unlock the door, he makes a kind of quiet plea to you to try and keep it down, as it were. And he mentions that Alexia is still sleeping. I hope. And with that, he opens the door into the dwelling. And as the two of you take Vitalius into the home, it's about what you expected on the inside. Again, fairly moderately furnished. Nothing terribly fancy. Almost not quite threadbare, but Spartan. It doesn't give you like the sense that it's terribly lived in, per se, or perhaps that it's the master, the head of the household, hasn't had the time nor the effort to make the home feel truly lived in. But as you pass through the kind of Spartan accommodations, he has you set your inheritor down. He kind of like clears out a space in the living area. Kind of brings out a bit of a low table. Kind of does his best to like pile some cloth, some sheets atop of it to try and make it somewhat comfortable, and perhaps to catch any fluids that might leak from your inheritor, as he continues his grim work, shall we say. And the two of you kind of get him situated, and Eutropius kind of does his best to try and keep things quiet, as it were. But he accidentally kind of kicks over his satchel as he's trying to kind of reorient the patient, and you see like a little set of what's the word? The surgical pliers, the clamps, shall we say. One of these little metal instruments comes kind of rolling out of the bag, and it kind of clatters. Not too terribly loudly, but enough to be kind of distinctly heard amongst the otherwise silence of the house. And you hear Eutropius just kind of mutter a quiet curse under his breath. And he kind of turns to you for a moment, and he just says, "Bear with me a second." And you see he goes to check on this Alexia. But before he can round the corner down the hall towards presumably her room, her chamber within this modest abode, this Alexia emerges quite quickly, and she has a bit of a nightgown on, and clearly drawn by the late night disturbance. She kind of pokes her head out of her chamber, and this woman, she's, should we say, a young woman, maybe perhaps late teens. Her face, there's something about it. Why don't you go ahead and give me a memory roll?
Charlie? Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Oh,
Great success.
you guys are always doing so well in these memory rolls. I am thoroughly
Woohoo.
impressed. Well, I shouldn't say impressed, it's random chance. But nonetheless, 2 successes on a, again, modest 3 dice. There's a spark of recollection as you see this woman, this young woman. You know where you've seen not quite the how do I put this? You know that you've seen this face before. It's kind of, it's filled with a sort of like youthful vigor and vitality, and even, you know, popping out to, you know, see this disturbance. There's not like a fear in her face, but just a sort of raw kind of curiosity mixed with sort of the excitement of, you know, a family returning home. And the way her hair catches in the lamplight, it rings a bell. And the name, now that the pieces kind of start coming together, Ypsilantis Alexia. And you realize that you know this woman, but you know now why it took you a moment, perhaps, for the gears to click. The face, it's been filled out. You knew this woman when she was but a girl, but a young child, and now coming to this realization, you've literally seen her grow up in the blink of an eye. Perhaps you find it a bit jarring, but when you think about this, there's another thread, perhaps another memory that comes into the fore. The same memory that you had on the island. You can still feel the doll kind of stuffed into the pocket of your tunic. You don't recall precisely if this woman, which you remember as this girl, is the same from that same memory. The hair is the same, that same sort of vitality and exuberance. It's all there, but you don't quite recall the face that you had seen in that first memory, but perhaps they're one and the same, but you can't be sure in this moment. But nonetheless, you know that you knew her in a previous descent, perhaps most likely the last time that you were awake in the city some 10 years ago. And while most of the context is lost, you knew that you had cared for her. That this was a child in need, and at the time you'd come to her aid, come to care for her, but you recall little else than that. And as you're kind of racking with this realization, this familiarity, Alexia and Eutropius, they kind of exchange a few words. He kind of badly tries to explain the situation that they've, found themselves in, that, this strange man in their home will be coming to stay with them for a while, that he'll be treating them here. And Alexia kind of resists a bit, is a bit uncomfortable with having, a stranger in their home, turning their home into a makeshift hospital of sorts. But Eutropius does his best to try and relieve her of her fears, of her concerns. And while these two are kind of talking this matter out, what are you doing, or what's going on in Tomos's head?
On a hunch, or just some strange, I guess, instinct, he kind of wants to pull out the doll that he kept and kind of hold it up and almost look at it. I guess maybe wait and see if this Alexia happens to recognize it, without really saying much.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of take out this doll and kind of absentmindedly kind of holding it out, a bit conspicuous, enough that you're trying to give her a view of it, per se. And eventually, Alexia's gaze is drawn towards yours as you're making this sort of subtle, not so subtle attempt of showing off this doll. And Alexia finally kind of turns her attention towards you, kind of gives you sort of strange, kind of quizzical look, almost as if she's kind of racking her brain. And she kind of turns back towards Eutropius, and she's like, who is this other guest? Will he be staying with us as well? And Eutropius is like, no, this is Tomos. He's a friend of our patient. And the woman, Alexia, that kind of quizzical look in her eye, there's a flash of recognition as your name is brought up in this conversation. And she kind of looks at you again, and she's like, Tomos, do I know you? Have we met before? You seem... I'm sorry, you seem a bit familiar.
You also seem familiar, but I must confess my memory is not very good these days. I apologize. This is late into the evening. I should probably take my leave. I do thank you for watching my friend, and both of you be rest assured I will compensate you generously for uh, this act of kindness.
And as you mention that, you see kind of a smirk spread on Alexia's face, and she kind of does like the shoulder kind of nudge with Eutropius, and you kind of you overhear her like whispering, and she's like, like generously, and you see that kind of smile spread on her face. Those previous concerns starting to fade. But nonetheless, continue.
Eutropius, if you, I'll be back within the next few days. If you want to come up with an estimate for his care, let me know, and I will get back to you on the compensation, if that sounds reasonable.
Yes, of course. We'll see how his condition improves over the night. You're welcome to stop by any time to come and check on him. I'll be around.
Most appreciated. I'll slide the doll back into my robe. Well, I should get going. Thank you once again. And Thomas will step out, close the door, and walk back to the tomb.
And yeah, you make your exit. You close the door and you walk away, heading back towards the tomb. And as you do, there's one sort of brief aside, shall we say, after you're kind of some distance from the door. You hear it open again, and you see once again you see Alexia's smiling face, and she kind of waves, kind of dimly bat-lit from the home, and she kind of hollers out into the night, just have a good night. You be safe.
Can she still see me?
Yeah, like you're like kind of
I'll
like walking
just
away. You're like
give a wave.
Yeah, you kind of.
I'll just give kind of an awkward wave and then trudge on.
Yeah. So there's this kind of like little awkward moment transpires, and you see the door kind of shut as an embarrassed Alexia kind of slips back into the family home, and leaves you alone with your thoughts. And as you are walking back to your tomb through the streets of Constantinople, what kind of thoughts are running through Tomos's head, and what does he intend to do now?
He sort of wonder. I mean, he knows. I mean, he picked up that Vatatzes had some kind of connection with Eutropius. He kind of wonders if Vatatzes knows more about. He might ask Vatatzes about Alexia if he knows anything. He just thinks he needs to figure out what exactly their relationship was, if any at all, 10 years ago. mostly frustrated he can't remember very much too clearly. There's a lot of information he wants to know, and he just doesn't.
That is fair. Well, as you make your return here, speaking of return, we have the return of Zavlus, who is here to join us once again, and with that, we shall return over to Nesret here, as I believe we had last left you with how do we say, you and Minervina had been chatting, had been speaking. You had just gone through this kind of moonlit stroll, and had shared a few words, and you had stopped kind of at the threshold of the Hagia Sophia, and you had a bit of a memory that came back to the fore. This memory filled of fire and brimstone, you know, the city burning, and you adding one more church to the fire. But nonetheless, something far more grand, far more magnificent has taken its place. This basilica here. A feat of architecture, of construction that a Tefa Abi such as yourself would no doubt have found some sort of value within, if only for the sheer brilliance of its construction. And even here, like cast in the starlight, it just soars to a height as if almost to match the sky, as if it's surging up from amongst the other buildings, kind of standing on high and looking down amongst the remainder of the city, kind of adorning it, because it's part of the city, glorying it in its own beauty. And as you kind of grapple with this memory and stare at this monumental feat of architecture and construction, you're perhaps lost in your own world for a few moments, and it's in this lull of the conversation that a curious Minervina kind of intervenes, and she just looks at you and she's like, are you okay?
You know, I may not agree with them, but man, can they build.
Good dumb.
And she kind
I'll
of
maybe like start to talk about some of the interesting architecture things. But I don't remember anything.
yeah,
Like comebacks.
yeah, you kind of nerd out, I guess, a bit, kind of pointing out like, oh, you know, the you know, just how magnificent of a structure this is. And like at the start of the conversation, you know, you're kind of made this aside of like, oh yeah, you know, it's, you know, man, can they build? And, you know, Benvina kind of like half-heartedly agrees with you, like, oh, you know, yes, it is certainly impressive. And like you start going into like all these reasons like why it's impressive. And especially this huge kind of colossal dome that seems to adorn it, and almost as if it's kind of like suspended from the heavens themselves. Like this sort of like feat, isn't like, wouldn't necessarily be considered conventionally possible, and yet somehow these bastards have pulled it off. And you're left with this sort of begrudging respect, I imagine, for this. And like as you like start to go on like into this like rant on your analysis of the structure, the salient sort of points that you can see, you can tell like you're starting to lose Minervina, who does not share the secrets of your guild.
Facing architecture.
Yes, she
Pull a real Ted Mosby there.
Yeah, and you can tell that
This
she's.
is not your mother.
Why don't you give me an empathy roll? What's an empathy?
I got one. So just straight empathy?
Wits plus empathy.
Oh, wits. I do have some wits to me.
He's
Yeah,
loving it. You tell him more about this dome.
Oh, I
Do you want
imagine
to
I
turn
go
into
on for a
dramatic
little
failure?
bit too long. No.
You don't want to make it
Characters
dramatic,
important to me.
Yes. You
Characters
don't want
important to me.
you want to flub what you've got going on. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So
I might go on a little too long, but I think at some point I'd be like, I'll try to wrap up the night. I mean, it's a nice, beautiful night.
yeah, and you both kind of stand here, in the Augustion, kind of staring at the Hagia Sophia, and she stares at the structure too, and like you continue going on and kind of start like winding down, but when you look at Minervina, she's also staring at the structure, but you can't quite tell what's going on in her head, but there's definitely something, some deep thought that she finds herself lost in, and you're not exactly sure how much she's listened to you, or how much you've been rambling on, if she's just lost interest or has found some point of yours salient enough to think about. But nonetheless, that's kind of the best that you get of like, she's thinking about something, but you don't know what. But she doesn't appear to be, shall we say, actively annoyed, or super engaged. But it's not enough for you to tell what's going on. What's going on in her
That's fair.
head? Women, the greatest mystery throughout all of your lifetimes. But
I'll mention it's getting late, I guess.
and
Should probably use some rest.
yes, I suppose it has been it's been a long night. But what about you?
Oh,
What do you intend to do now?
I should probably get some sleep. Probably rest up for tomorrow.
Get
I gotta
weak.
I gotta find I think I should find something a little more comfortable and blendy with society.
Fair enough. I don't think that look exactly suits you. And she kind of gives you this little side eye at, you
With it.
dressed up
Oh.
in these, priestly
Priest robe.
robes. You get this big old emblem of the cross kind of patterned on yourself as you've been kind of vocally admonishing the church throughout the night. Just a bit off-putting, perhaps, your words and your attire. But nonetheless.
Maybe try to strike up a trade between you and John. Maybe he wants his old clothes back.
I'm sure these robes would be worth something.
But with that, Minervina bids you farewell, wishes you a good night, and kind of sets off on her own. And you can see as she kind of walks off into the city alone. Presumably, she has some place to stay here. You never did ask. But she seems to be heading off with enough intent. She seems to be heading somewhere, at least. But that leaves you alone here in the square, in the Augustion, as you're kind of sandwiched within the great, shall we say, structures of Constantinople. On one side, you have the Hagia Sophia. On another, you have the Imperial Palace, and beside it, this great hippodrome. All wonderful feats of architecture and engineering. But buildings are not human company, and you are now alone with your own thoughts. And speaking of that, what are the thoughts going through Nesret's head? What's he planning on? What's he thinking in the moment, and what does he intend to do now?
I think in the moment he's probably a little bit, I guess, probably maybe a little bit of the architect in him, the old architect, what little he remembers, by just pondering and thinking about it all, taking in the sights, and see, I did make a memory roll last time on the church, right?
Indeed, yes.
I remember burning it down. But I don't think I'll burn it down today. I think it'll just give me more to, I guess morbid curiosity, because here, domes aren't easy to create. So I imagine I think he'd probably be a little bit curious about looking more into where the church, just finding out more about the church, even if he doesn't necessarily agree.
Yeah.
But just.
And with
I
that,
got a book to read.
Yeah, you do have a book to read. And I imagine perhaps you're curious about the interior of the church, though it's a.
Oh, would it be open?
I don't imagine it.
You know what?
I'm sure
after he's.
I'm sure it's.
After he sees
should we
her
say?
leave, I think he would try to open it.
Yeah. So you go to open it, and the door to the church, this large door, you kind of like rattle the handles for a bit, and it gives you the impression that it's been closed for the night. But these sorts of grand structures, they usually have some sort of inhabitants, some people that stay throughout the night, or that live and work here in the church. And the thought perhaps crosses your mind that you could, if you so desire, knock or bang on the door till someone hopefully comes to answer and perhaps let you in. Or perhaps you might return in the morning, when a church might be open to the public, though it would perhaps be a bit less of a private experience or a private tour. But both of these are kind of options that pass through your head, though you imagine you might not get the full splendor, shall we say, of a structure in the night. Torch, given all the windows that you can kind of you'd spied before, kind of rimming the base of the dome. You imagine some, say, natural light would probably illuminate the space within far better than some meager torchlight would provide.
Oh, well, I don't think I'll actually knock to enter. I might get a little too much attention with too many questions about the robes and maybe my appearance. So I think I'll retire to the tomb for the night.
You don't want to pretend to be a priest? You've already got the robes. But
Yeah,
You
I'll
probably
follow
wasn't
that.
looking so dead.
yeah.
How dead am I looking?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, we lost
Charlie. Whoops.
Charlie for just a moment there. Hopefully he comes back to us. But regardless, where were we? Yes, the manner of disguising yourself as a priest, perhaps not the best option, shall we say? But one that is available. Though I'm not sure how skilled Nestret would be at such a feat. But nonetheless, you leave that idea elsewhere. And with that, that idea shelved. What's Nestret's next step here? Heading back to the tomb, I'm presuming.
Yeah, I'm gonna try this rest thing.
There.
You see these mortals try.
All right. So you return to the tomb. Ramos returns to the tomb, and Seshet return to the tomb here. All at, shall we say, somewhat staggered times. But
I imagine that's probably lost.
yeah, given your lengthy conversation and sharing of small talk into the wee hours of the night with the White Jackal.
The White Jackal.
So
Yeah.
let's say that Nestret, you were the first to return. I think you're the second to leave. But your trip was perhaps a bit less lengthy than the others. So you return back to the tomb with the full intent to get a few hours of rest, as these mortals do, as you are quite fatigued, shall we say, mentally, not physically. Your mind is drained and exhausted from all the efforts of the day. Your willpower is drained, as it were. And you retire. How do you go about getting your rest, shall we say? Do you try and just sit and meditate throughout the night? Do you actually try and lay down and sleep as the mortals do? How do you intend to rejuvenate your mind?
I guess I would try to look for, somewhere that seems semi-comfortable to try to rest. Probably like a human.
All right.
What I remember of how humans rest.
Yeah. Doing your best. You
Silly humans.
Maybe read my book.
read your book for a bit before trailing off. So here's where things get interesting, shall we say. So you haven't really had a chance to read through the book as of yet, and in your, shall we say, discussion with Father Vatatzis and Minervina, they were kind of quick to proclaim that, it's a Bible, that you can clearly see the cross, emblazoned on the front of this text. And, as you kind of like lay down, kind of, prop your back up against, a crumbling column and kind of start flipping through the pages. Why don't you go ahead and give me we'll say an intelligence and academics roll.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember
Start flipping
some of my,
the pages.
what do you call those, affinities.
Why don't you go ahead and give me?
So I thought this one had something specific.
Intelligence and academics roll.
I don't have any willpower. Okay, I'm good. 2 successes. That is a lot of ones.
All right, so 2 successes. So you kind of start flipping through the book here, and on first glance, it's what you expect. It's this holy book of the faith, but as you dive deeper into this text, something strikes you as unusual. There are elements within the text here. Elements that are, shall we say, familiar to you as you look through this. There are attempts, shall we say, to incorporate, shall we say, some of the mythology of your homeland, of your religion. It's woven into, shall we say, a more palatable, more familiar form for the mortals of this era. But you can clearly tell with your 2 successes that someone has been engaging in a bit of, I shouldn't say a bit, someone has been engaging in a good deal of heresy, as they've been linking, shall we say, or outright stealing some of these stories, some of these myths of your religion, and recasting them in the light of this text, of this modern faith. And with your 2 successes, it's clear that this isn't just some, shall we say, literary borrowing. This isn't just, something that was vaguely inspired by stories of another time. No, someone's very clearly made an active attempt to incorporate these elements of your faith, and perplexingly, they don't quite agree with your preconceived notions of this faith. These seem to be, how should we say, new additions to this text. This isn't what you had expected. This isn't what you had come to know thus far from your exchange with Father Vitatsi's, of what little you know of this faith. And as you're like starting to get into this, kind of drawn into this mystery, shall we say. It's about that time that the remainder of your Moret arrives. Tomos, and not too long after, followed by Seshet. And again, Tomos, you've dropped off Vitalius, and when you arrive back at the tomb, you see Father Vitatsi's. The aging man is quite thoroughly slipped into sleep at this point, and curiously, the cat Mao has kind of curled up around the sleeping figure of the old man, and you see Nesret kind of propped against one of the columns here, and you spy him reading from this book, this tome. Do the two of you exchange any words, or you just kind of like nod and go about your way?
I guess I'll walk over to Nesret and kind of ask him in a low voice, was your trip enlightening?
Yeah. Yes, it was. It seems I might have some history with some buildings around here.
Interesting. You wouldn't happen to have found any new information about this city, would you?
Oh. I guess, not really.
It's alright if you...
kind of talked. I guess I know a little bit more about the layout. It was more familiar than I expected.
That's good. My
Vitalius.
My inheritor is with a doctor. The doctor's house currently. He'll be staying there until he's healed. In the meantime, I need to find a compensation for the doctor. I'll be doing that. In the meantime, though,
I guess we don't have any currency in this time, do we?
No,
We're
you're poor. Yes, you woke up with nothing but the funeral rags on your backs out of that tomb.
I guess we'll just have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps.
I have till the end of the
Such
week.
a nonsensical phrase. Where did you hear that?
Speak of the devil, Seshet, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I come walking in on that comment. Yeah. Greetings, gentlemen. I've met with the White Jackal, and it seems we might have a friend in Constantinople. I've been invited to a race at the Hippodrome.
Is that so?
Yes, tomorrow, or I guess today. Yeah, tomorrow. Is it already tomorrow today? It's so late.
Yeah, time's. I don't imagine there's great timekeeping in
At night.
in this period. Yes.
My sundial doesn't seem to be working, Trevor.
Have you tried turning it off and on again? Shake it a bit.
Yeah, use your moon dial.
Yes, classic.
Just hit it. Just hit it.
Yeah.
You're actually supposed to be looking at the stars, clearly.
Yeah, that's
And-
what I'm supposed to tell the time. Anyway, and I thought I
just-
might extend this invitation to the rest of you.
Hmm,
By no means do you have to come.
Have you tried to?
I'm interested.
I'm interested.
I would like to meet this white jackal myself.
He seems quite pleasant.
Hmm.
So, trust whatever efforts have gone underway have been fruitful. We probably should discuss and I look at the tomb, the state of our living arrangements. We cannot quite simply
Yes.
just live with these corpses strutting all around in our presence.
More importantly, if we want to make it a base of operations again, it's going to have to be a little more habitable, preferably without the attack from a fiend.
Yes. We should probably figure out what we're gonna do about that before it comes back.
Yes. In the meantime, I don't think.
There you go.
Sorry, I was just gonna say. In the meantime, I don't think we'll be able to really rebuild our cults down here until it's gone.
No, I don't think so.
Lest we want our new members to join the bones on the floor.
Yes. What do we know about this thing? Let we know. Like, you need like a visage, like an item bearing its visage to summon it, and either we destroy that visage or we just use it to summon it to finally kill it.
So to refresh your memory of what you've learned thus far, so this scarab-headed fiend of yours, you know that these fiends are conjured into the world by depictions, whether they be idols or images or art of whatever sort of representational depiction of them forms a gateway of sorts for them to enter the world and anchors them here. Destroying such an idol, such an image, will cut off one avenue, shall we say, of binding it to the sunlit realms, the lands of the living. But it's already here. It's already made its way. Destroying the idol at this point won't cast it back into Duat. You'll need to kill it properly this time. And in doing so, with no, shall we say, with no avenue of escape, it will be forced back into the depths of the Duat. But yes, your assertion is pretty close there.
Okay, cool. Just double checking on that. Perhaps the White Jackal is more knowledgeable on fiends than we are. Topic that we could broach with him. See if he knows anything of summoning rituals. I certainly don't.
That would be a wise decision.
Wait, do I know anything about summoning rituals? That's something actually worth thinking about. I don't think I've made any sort of roll to try to know.
Yeah.
Like,
Why don't you go ahead and give me
like
intelligence?
Occult?
Occult, yeah.
yeah. 2 successes.
All right. So, with 2 successes, you know that there are rituals. The, shall we say, simplest of which would be the construction of an idol, of an image, but it's already here. It's already in the lands of the living. But you do know that there are other sorceries, other rituals that can be done to call entities from the sands of Neter-Katet, from Twilight. But outside of, shall we say, specific utterances and affinities, these are the realms of mortal hands and mortal magics. And perhaps you might recall that you've had such sorcerers at a time, either in your employ or perhaps that you've drawn upon their services before. But you know that there are magics that are denied to you by virtue of your deathless state, that some magics are only permitted for those that still yet live. However, the summoning of such an entity is a rather, I should say, straightforward, but relatively speaking, is a simple ritual. The kind of thing that most novice sorcerers or dabblers in the occult might be able to manage. And you certainly might be able to provide a guiding hand, shall we say, in assisting this. You know enough, you know bits and pieces, though such things are denied to you. You know enough sort of fragments of sorcery that you might be able to help cobble together some sort of ritual. But again, you'll need some sort of mortal hands outside of
human, yes.
Yes, you'll need to find some sort of sorcerer, either someone experienced or someone otherwise gifted that you might be able to tutor, to teach. And
other words, need a new cultist. Gotcha.
And the thought might cross into your head, as it were, that you might already have someone that fits the bill. Not for a sorcerer per se, but someone with a gift, a knack, a talent, as it were, as your mind racks for possibilities. You can't help but think of one of your companions. You do recall that Minervina woman. She had been a seer, an oracle of sorts, that she'd been blessed with prophetic visions. That does seem to imply that she's some gift for magic. With enough poking and prodding, she might be more than capable of such a feat, should you wish to pursue that avenue. And
she's not here at the moment.
As you're explaining, as I'm sure you're probably explaining some of the details of the necessities of the summoning ritual, the rest of you can probably come to the same conclusion, whether you agree with the idea or not. The idea is there. You do know of at least one person, this Minervina, that does seem to have some sort of knack for magical talent, as it were. But whether you want to cast her into such a role is up for a lot of you to debate and discuss.
Be down for it. Giving her the basics
Who
101.
do you is this like a thought that you're keeping to yourself, or do you like broach this subject to the rest of the Moret?
Yeah, like now thinking about it, like Chasette's like thinking about it, like it seems that Nessret like kind of like got a claim on her, and I don't want to like waste my time and like effort to teach somebody else's like cultist when it's like only gonna really benefit them. So maybe she's gonna keep shut up about it for now. Maybe like either like find a different person or poach Mavina.
What about the rest of the Moret? Tomos, Nessret, do either of you like suggest this idea, or do you just try and keep this to yourself and quietly ponder trying to find a sorcerer in the city?
I'm evaluating the others in the group. So I feel like I know.
Well, Seshet's staying quiet. What of Tomos? Are you gonna float this idea to the group, or do you remain silent?
I'll float it. I don't really. I really just feel like if it's an option, I'm just gonna throw it out.
All right. So
What if? Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'll say
Go ahead.
what. I'll just say, what about that Mirnavina? She seems to have some capacity for precognitions. Perhaps she could help with the summoning if we taught her.
I suppose so, but who would teach them?
I also kind of look at Nessret. Perhaps the one who seems to have the closest connection to her.
It's something to think about. Let's see. Would I know of any? What would I? Okay, what would I know about risk related to this proposition?
Even without an occult roll, I'll just give this to you. Summoning rituals are never without risk.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Even the simplest of rituals can go wrong, and that's more or less, shall we say, common knowledge for those cued into mortal sorcery, for these rites and rituals that are common to your cults, to these sorcerers, to and those that have learned from, shall we say, independent study that haven't benefited from Arisen patronage. The one thing that's kind of common throughout through all this sorcery is that these rites, these rituals are very, very exacting. They follow a very specific formula, and messing with the formula even slightly can lead to potentially disastrous results. And that's not including adding the additional complicating factor of summoning an entity into the mix, especially one that's proven its capacity for violence, like the Fiend has. But perhaps you think yourselves capable of protecting her from such a threat. I mean, after all, you have bested the creature once before. Surely you can do so again.
Easily.
I'm not worried about fighting the creature, protecting her from the creature. I'm more concerned. I don't, I'll say I don't think she's ready, but it's something I'll ponder as she grows.
I hate to push this, but if you refuse to teach her, then we need to find a sorcerer as soon as possible who can cast it.
Yes. Speaking of that, Set has plans, and I'm gonna whip out my favorite utterance of all time, Dreams of Dead Gods, the first tier, and spend a single point of ab, and she is she intones the words of this utterance, and the task that she sets out with fate to fulfill, is to bring her a mortal with the potential for magic.
So,
Yeah.
not a established sorcerer, but again, someone with
Yeah, I want
gift.
somebody I can get my hooks into.
So, what was your phrase? Someone with the potential for magic.
Potential for magic, yeah.
Okay.
Some Timothy Hunter shit right here.
Careful what you wish for.
I hope I don't actually get Timothy Hunter. That'd be a bit much.
All right. So, again, you becoming.
Maybe I'd be infringing on some of the local mages.
Yes. Well, we'll see what fate has in store for you now. You've cast the coin into the wishing well. We'll see where those ripples lead. So, yeah, you throw out, once again, becoming a staple for Sachet, throwing out the dreams of dead gods, hoping to draw someone with sorceress potential into your midst. But again, these things take time. Yes, fate operates on its own grand cosmic scale. It is not subject to the immediate whims of yourself. But in time they shall come, or they will suffer.
Yes.
But with that cast, with that utterance used once again, what now?
I suppose I'm gonna get that point of ab back from our geometry that we've established here. Yoink. And I suppose like Sasset's just gonna kind of like wander Constantinople for a bit, just kind of go on a bit of a touristy sightseeing tour, just to like re-establish herself with like the city. Like she's obviously been here, and she wants to like know it a bit better, even if it's at night.
All right, so you just kind of spend the rest of the night kind of wandering the city, trying to get a feel for the layout and whatnot. All right. With that aside, what of Tomos? What are you doing with with what little of the night remains?
I'm gonna meditate.
Okay. Are you intending to restore your pillars, or are you intending to try and rest and recuperate your willpower?
Willpower.
All right. And you can do so, rather simply. And Sret, you're kind of faced with a bit of a decision here. So you've kind of dipped your toes into this strange heretical hybrid tone, as it were. You've kind of gotten through, shall we say, the first chapter, as it were, and the rest of the tome is is calling to you, but you'd already made up your mind earlier to try and rest, but the book's in your hands. Do you keep reading? Do you burn the midnight oil trying to learn all that you can, or does your mental fatigue prove more necessary than your thirst for knowledge, for understanding?
Oh, as tempting as it is to read, it would be nice to have a little bit of willpower.
A little something.
It's been a day. It's
Oh,
been a day. I got some things to think about and meditate on.
All right, and you're currently out of willpower, right? You're like
Yeah.
zero, zilch, nada. Yeah.
Nada.
Fair enough. So, with that, you and Tomos take some time to rest, recuperate. You can go ahead and give yourselves a point of willpower back as you find the experience refreshing. Even though you're sitting idle when you could be doing something, there's a certain je ne sais quoi of just doing nothing for a change. You've lived so many lifetimes always on a mission, always chasing the next thing, and there's something to be said about just stopping, even for a few hours, and doing nothing at all. And while you rest and recuperate, Sachet wanders the city at night, hoping to regain her bearings. So, one thing we'll leave on here. I want Sachet to give me a memory roll as you peruse the city.
2 successes.
Man, you guys on these memory rolls. Your wandering takes you throughout the city, and you see all sorts of sights in the hours before dawn. You see the highs and the lows, as it were. You've already witnessed the magnificence of the Hagia Sophia, the Hippodrome, when you first pass through the Augustion, and as you go further away, the buildings become more modest, and you wander through other stranger corners of the city, where the less fortunate reside. It's an interesting experience for you. This sort of dichotomy, as it were, the stark difference between the grand opulence of the heart of the city and the teeming throngs, the masses of commoners, of peasants that make up most of this city. Many of them native, but many of them also from across the empire, from its holdings across the sea. And something unsticks itself from your memory as you wander the streets at night, seeing the sights that you do. When you think of it, you wander the meze as this happens. Though now at night, the shops have kind of closed, the stalls have been pulled away. Now it's this big sort of empty street, as it were, that leads out into the Augustion. You can kind of see the palace at the end of the road, kind of dimly lit by starlight and by the braziers in front of it. And your mind starts to go through the events of the day, the images of your previous trip through the mese kind of flashing through your head, the adoration, the worship of the peasantry that you experience. It feels so intimately familiar. It's more than just the worship of a cult, of a scattered few. It's the love of a city, a nation, and you dream of throngs of people falling at your feet, awaiting your commands. People crave a leader. And who is more worthy of a position than you? After all, you are the warrior poet, the philosopher king. Your grasp of the law is without question. Your ruling's just and absolute. Are you not unlike the pharaoh? Just as he was the bow of Zar, of Horus, what are you, if not the bow of Nefertem, the eternal lotus, your judge? Vague images begin to surface. Not a dream, but a memory. Yes, you have known that kind of love. One fitting for a god queen. You sit upon a throne, wearing the crown, wielding the orb and scepter. You know not how you've gotten here, but it feels as if it's your rightful place. The hall is pleasing to your eyes. The treasures and tapestries draw your attention, though you can see little beyond the glitter of gold and vibrant dyes. So many reverent mortals come to you, asking, begging, pleading. You bask in their praise, their worship, but you don't hear their prayers. Their mouths seem to move, but no sound emerges. Either they lack the ability to speak, or perhaps you lack the ability, capacity to listen. And with that, I am going to bring us to a little break here, as Sesha marinates in that strange memory. We will be back in just a couple minutes here, so sit tight, and we will continue and see where the next day brings us. Anyway, be back in just a few. right, and we are back. So, with our return also comes the turn of a new day, as our Norette here greets the sun to a new day here in Constantinople. With that, again, we have Thomas and Nesret, who have been resting in the confines of their tomb, or should I say the dilapidated manor on top of it. And Seshat has been wandering the city and managed to stir some long-buried memory up to the surface. But getting back to the pair in the tomb who have just awoken, shall we say, in a manner of speaking, from their rest. For Thomas and Nesret, what do you guys do with the dawn of this new day?
I mean, I guess I'd start cleaning.
start cleaning out the bodies.
Yeah. We'll have it up to 2.
Where
Could you-
where do you intend to put
we
those
almost done?
bodies?
I tend to burn them to dust. That's my best idea. Eventually.
So you want to like kind of gather them up somewhere in the manor and start a fire and just try and
Cremate 'em.
try and cremate these bones.
I have a knack for fire.
All right. So you certainly do. You descend into the confines of your tomb, and you begin to clean house, so to speak. Start gathering the errant bones, littering the place, and with that, when you enter the tomb again, you notice something. There's that familiar kind of tingling sensation that you had noticed when you had first installed the relic of your harmonic centerpiece. The center, as it were, of your tomb's life. But there's that familiar tingling sensation that you felt when you first put the relic in here and restored this function, this power to your tomb. And with that, once again, is accompanied a cacophony of voices. They're like just at the edge of your perception. Like you don't quite hear them at first, but like if you just strain just a bit, you can like almost make out these deathly quiet voices. But they're not so much speaking to you as they're almost more cries, wails, moans, and as you listen, as you try to parse through these voices, you can tell that there's several of them. It's not the same voice making these, but a collection, a conglomerate of these voices. And from the best of your reckoning, you would surmise, should you stop to truly listen, they sound as if they're in pain. Do you do anything with that that information, or do you just try and push this uncomfortable thought into a little corner of your head and finish doing the uncomfortable work of clearing out the corpses from your tomb?
I guess, is there a way I could connect to whether or not they're the souls of the bodies? And the two.
That's a good question. Now, as far as I know about your character, as it were, there's only one power, I believe, that you have that would enable such a thing, though it's perhaps not one best unleashed within the confines of your tomb. Conversing with the dead is not something that you have, shall we say, the innate talent for. And you can't be certain, at least without contacting these, reaching out to these voices directly. You can't be sure that they belong to the corpses of your once cultists, but it's perhaps a safe assumption to be made, considering the, well, multitude of corpses that litter your tomb. As far as confirming that suspicion, there's two avenues, at least, that you might think of. The first, the dramatic, shall we say, and perhaps destructive, if not dangerous, use would be to unleash the, I believe it's the third tier of revelations of smoke and flame, and become, as it were, a literal pillar of fire, which is not perhaps something that you want to unleash within the sacred confines of your tomb and set things potentially ablaze, but it would burn your physical form away, leaving you as a spectral body within the realms of Netter Kertet. Side effects of giant conflagration aside, the other option would be something a bit more, say, mundane, relatively speaking. Much as you discussed the opportunity of using a gifted mortal in acts of sorcery. Another common act of sorcery would be communication with the dead, if not the summoning of the dead. Something, again, you wager you might be able to teach or coach a prospective individual, or perhaps find a necromancer or other priest of death within this city and have them use such magics for you. Although, given that you now know that there is another Arisen within the city, this white jackal, well, you don't possess any other extraordinary capabilities of interacting with the dead. Perhaps this white jackal may have some affinity or utterance that would lend him such an ability. Though, again, that's not a guarantee. You have no idea what this white jackal is capable of. But perhaps he might have some ability, or perhaps he knows of someone who might. But is that even an avenue that you would want to pursue? How much do you want to rely on a strange Arisen you have yet to meet is another matter entirely. But nonetheless,
if I was just trying to make the connection, I might think about Minervina for this one.
Yeah, something to consider. But nonetheless, after as you're working through this in your head, almost as quickly as they begin, the voices soon cease again, leaving you to the rather morbid business of cleaning the bones from the tomb. While you are going about this endeavor, why don't you go ahead and either give me a perception roll, so either wits and composure, or perhaps an investigation roll, as you do your best to tidy up, shall we say. Whichever one you prefer. I could see both working here.
So what would I pair? Investigation would I pair like intelligence or wits?
Yeah, or wits and composure for perception.
I don't think I'm gonna try investigation. My wits and composure isn't. Well, investigation.
Okay.
Hedge my bets. Hey, it looks like that was the right decision.
Yeah. It sure is. With 6 dice, you have a single success. So cleaning out the tomb has provided you with an interesting perspective, as you perhaps quite literally sweep some of the dead off of the floor, and you now have this like growing bone pile in some forsaken corner of the manor, this mound of skeletal mishmashed corpses at your disposal. There are 2 things that you notice as you clean up the tomb here. The first one you notice as you are ferrying the bones back and forth out of your tomb. You're going in and out. You have a pass through the front door, as it were, the portal, the entryway into your tomb, time and time again. And as you make these passes, you notice something on the inside of the door. That is the side facing the main room of your tomb, the central chamber. On the inner side of this door, you notice at first what you thought was perhaps normal wear and tear to the average eye. You realize that these scratches on the wall are not the work of a chisel, of someone hewing this door to its shape and function. The cuts, the grooves are far too shallow, and you notice that there's almost like a bit of chalky powder that is still kind of clinging to these shallow grooves. And then it clicks when you follow one of these grooves to its terminus, and you see buried within the end of one of these grooves, there's a piece of fingernail that's still stuck in the wall. And you realize these are all scratch, and like they're covering this door. Like it gives you the impression, on first glance it would just be standard wear and tear. But there's so many of them, and you realize now that the people in here, they were likely trapped in here, and they were fighting literally tooth and nail, not to fight back, but to try and escape. But that does beg the question of what were they escaping from? But that detail aside, as you clean the rest of the tomb, as you have that strange thought to think on, you find one other oddity amongst the tomb here. On the floor, there is a piece of colored glass. The kind that seems to match the mosaics that adorns the floor of this room. Is that same bright color, is though a bit dirty in its present state. You kind of give it a little bit of a rub. Take the layer of dust and grime off of it, and it shines once again in the torchlight. But it seems as if it's a bit odd. It's not quite cut, as it were. It's too big to be a component piece, but perhaps something that was carved into smaller pieces to make this mosaic. But the most distressing thing about it is there's only one side of the surface that seems to be cut, or rather cleaved. It's almost like a sheer fracture point on the cut end of this chunk, this little piece. But when you kind of turn it over to examine it, it's very smooth on the rest of it, and smooth and almost round. And as you look at it further, you realize this looks awfully like the tip of a finger. And indeed, as you turn it over, there's even a little perfect impression of a fingernail on this little broken piece. And why don't you give me either crafts or perhaps another investigation roll. I think either of those might be appropriate.
I don't think I can. I'm gonna do with -3 on crafts.
So investigation.
So I'll do another investigation.
All right.
Yeah,
So
3 successes.
3 successes. So you examine this piece that resembles a bit of a finger, or perhaps a toe. It's not that this piece has been smoothed, has been sanded or filed to make this shape, as it were. It is it's not even perfectly smooth. In fact, you can see little ridges, little grooves, almost as if it was following the pattern of the skin. It's a perfect replica, perhaps, of a piece of a tip, a finger. This isn't something that someone could do, with tools, as it were. There'd be lines, there'd be sort of telltale marks that have been worked, that have been shaped and sanded to this. You couldn't get that like fine level of detail. That would take an inordinate amount of skill to achieve, though the other conjecture that you might have seems entirely far-fetched, perhaps, that this piece came this way, either impossibly by nature or by some act of sorcery. Either way, you highly doubt that mortal hands had shaped this to be such a eerie, lifelike resemblance without flaw.
Oh, I just got my willpower back. I'll use it. Let's do my affinity model life web.
What's that do?
Yeah, why don't
By spending a willpower point when touching an object, the Arisen senses the object's intended purpose and gains an image of the object's creator. If the object is a vessel, she instead gains an image of its last bearer and may track them as if they were the vessel itself via Kefir.
Yes.
For as long as she retains hold of it.
Now, regretfully, or perhaps regretfully, this item is not a vessel. It carries no inherent magical power of its own, but the rest of your affinity, shall we say, has its part to play. So you draw upon your model life web, and you realize this object's, shall we say, intended purpose and an image of its creator. So, as far as its intended purpose, it seems someone has gone through the trouble, as it were, to create such a lifelike replica of this finger, and presumably, perhaps there was more to it, solely with the intent of destroying such a work, such a masterpiece of sculpture, to make tesserae, these tiny little pieces that form the base of a mosaic. And you gain an image of its creator as you gaze at it. What you witness is a wiry, kind of athletic, dark-skinned man, with black hair, kind of arranged in these long dreadlocks, and a neatly trimmed beard, perhaps Nubian in origin. But as you ponder this idea of someone making something so perfect just to destroy it, that definitely sounds familiar. And I don't know if you recall Zavlus, but the previous night you'd been talking to Minervina about the visions that she had been experiencing, these prophetic visions. You asked her if there was any recurring symbols, images that she had seen. Do you remember what she said?
Oh, yeah, there's a
Got that.
whole creating
She had
something
the
and then
image,
destroying
yes,
it.
of a sculptor breaking
Yeah.
a beautiful statuesque,
Like destroying it like piece by piece, wasn't
yes, breaking it down piece by piece, a beautiful lifelike statue. And as those two thoughts collide, and that, shall we say, bit of prophetic vision striking you as perhaps, you know, Minervina having some real talent here, we're going to cut back to Tomos, who I believe was intending to check in on his inheritor here. So, you know, it's the following morning. You have a chance to think about what you want to say, assuming he's awake at this point. How do you phrase things? How do you what words do you thrust into your inheritor's mind as you draw upon the strange and magical abilities of your guild's affinity to speak to them?
Well, I'll reach out using my affinity nexus of the soul and say, Vitellius, if you can hear this, I need you to fill me in on how both of you are doing and on what you know about the person who betrayed you.
There's a pause, a silence that lasts for a few moments, and eventually you do get a response, albeit delayed, and you hear Vitalius's thoughts transferred back to you. And once again, rather stoically, Vitalius informs you that I'm fine. But you have asked that I will answer. You had inquired about this traitor, the one that had lured me, correct? How I came to this, and like he kind of like trails off for a moment before kind of regaining some bit of composure. message. I had received a message. It bore the seal, the mark of a Grandmaster. I went to answer the call, the summons. I didn't know what to expect. The Grandmaster, he obscured his face, but I did catch some details before I was ambushed by the soldiers lying in wait. There was a name. I doubt it was his real name. A code, perhaps, but perhaps you can make use of it. Feridun. I overheard them say. His accent, it was slight, but I think he was Sasanian, Persian. He had black hair, average height, kind of thin of build, and he smelled distinctly of saffron. But I'm sorry, that's all I can recall before they knocked me out.
That's more than enough, Vitalius. I should at least be able to start an investigation. Thank you. And regarding your stay, simply focus on recovering your strength. I'll deal with the payments myself.
As you wish, my lord. But should you need me, should you require me, I'm at your service.
Well, I suppose if I had to give you an order, my order is to rest their strength. I'm going to need you at your best in the coming few days. But for now, heal up. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out either.
As you command, my lord. And with that, the conversation comes to a conclusion. And Sachet returns from her wandering of the city as the new day dawns and the call of the hippodrome speaks to you.
Yeah.
You have some time, shall we say, before the first of the races begin. But you imagine, and it might take some time to prepare, or perhaps make your companions a bit more presentable, perhaps.
They can look after themselves in terms of getting dressed. I'm not their mother.
I wasn't sure how shall we say, if you wanted to be seen in the same light as them, but nonetheless.
No. Yeah, they can take care of themselves. If they want to dress up as priests, that's their prerogative. If they want something else, that's also their on them to acquire.
What is your prerogative, Sachet?
I think she really liked that my mind's coming to a blank. That bureaucrat at the harbor.
Athanasius?
Athanasius, yes. And I think she wants him to come along. and perhaps in a not so wise application of her favorite utterance, uh, she is going to use the first tier of dreams of dead gods to get him the day off, essentially, as she will get him the day off to come to the hippodrome. It's she's more interested in bringing him along than the other two.
So
See how it is.
let me get this straight. So are you trying to use the dreams of dead gods to pull him to the hippodrome, or are you trying to use it to convince the powers that be that he needs a day off? Because those are two very distinct things.
Yeah. Bring him to the hippodrome. I don't care if it's a bit inconvenient for him.
All right.
Yeah. Maybe like a strange bumbling into over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this guy. You know, he's pretty cool. I'm just gonna
I'm interested. Like he knows what's happening. He's a bureaucrat of the city.
Yeah, let's just hit him with horrific visions until he complies.
Yeah. He could be somebody useful to me.
Yeah.
Perhaps potential recruits into my bludgeoning cult. I need somebody other than Father John and the cat.
Yes. Well, I mean, you've got two. You've got your old man. You've got your mascot. It's a start. It's somewhere.
I need more though.
All right. So, once again, a staple for Seshet, you call upon the dreams.
I mean, every mummy has this one, but
yeah, but you're on Fate's ass. This descent. You were really bothering Fate to do what it will, to do your will more specifically. So, aside from assailing Athanasius with horrific visions lest he go to the races, to the hippodrome, is there anything else that Seshet has?
If I can think of, no. Yeah.
All right, so
she might talk to the locals about hey, what is this hippodrome kind of thing about, just to get an idea of what's it's the fundamentals of the sport, but other than that,
yeah,
I can't think of it.
Sure. Why don't you give me probably a presence and socialize roll? You kind of try and find some people at the taverns. Hit up some of the locals pre-gaming, as it were, before the races.
Yeah.
All right. So
who's the best team in town?
Yeah. So you get the gist. These are chariot races. Something that perhaps you might be familiar with. Specifically around a rather, well, you've seen the building. It's a rather long, sort of stretched oval racetrack. But more importantly, you know that it is a bit of a sticking point, shall we say, for people in the city here. Lots of folks are very, very invested in the races at the hippodrome. It's a local tradition, as it were, and people will come out in droves to see the races and to cheer on their teams. And coming in as this foreigner, trying to learn about the city, hitting up these the people on the streets, they kind of give you the basic rundown, as it were. The races, they are against teams of chariots, and they're riders. And these teams, or as they call them here, these deans, are a bit more than just a sporting club. They are almost like a fraternal sort of organization. It's like a social gathering slash political entity, almost a gathering of people under a common banner, not only uniting around the color of their team, the most prominent being the blues and the greens, but also find themselves uniting under more say concrete goals, advancing certain political agendas, or stances on religious debates. But there are 4 teams: the blues, the greens, the whites, and the reds. But the blues and the greens are the biggest, the most populous, the most famous of these teams. And with your brief introduction, it seems like the general sort of lines drawn appear to be on class lines, to some degree. The blues seem to be favored by the nobility, the aristocracy, the wealthy, while the greens seem to be more comprised of fans of the fans are more of the common class, the peasantry, as it were. And on the subject of religious grounds, the blues tend to be more orthodox, while the greens tend to favor, shall we say, more heretical, depending on how you see it, avenues, specifically a rather split issue in the faith, this idea of monophysitism. Of the specifics of probably bore you beyond all belief. You're not here for a religious lecture on the fine hairs of orthodoxy, but nonetheless, those seem to be the lines that are drawn. So you know that there are real stakes in these races. There's more to these teams than just
being teams.
Than just being teams,
Yeah.
yes. Than
Culture.
being sports culture, yes. There's real weight behind these teams, but nonetheless. So that's
Well, now I know what team I am. Go Blues.
Go Blues, yes. All right. So while you're doing that preparation, learning a bit what you can, Tomos, Nesret, what are you guys doing as the clock begins to tick down towards the hippodrome, towards the races? What do you do with the time you have left?
Does Minervina ever show up to the tomb? Or I guess I'd probably go searching her out.
Do you intend to? I mean, I guess you're probably spending quite some time cleaning out the old bones, as it were.
Yeah, someone's got to do it at some point.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that at some point in the morning that Minervina does return to the tomb, as probably as you're coming to somewhat of a conclusion of wiping the last of the bones and dust and debris from your tomb, and maybe as you're like examining this strange piece, as it were, this little blue glass finger you hear the familiar voice of Minervina hollering down from the top of the stairs at the end of the passage leading to your tomb. And as you surmise, it is the voice of Minervina who inquires, are you down there, Nesret?
Yes I am. I'll answer her. I'll let her know down here. Just doing some cleaning.
And with that, you hear kind of Minervina descending down the stairs, and you see her kind of at the end of the hall as you clearing out more of the bones, the rags, the debris and whatnot. Maybe you have like an active armful. You've got like a little piece of a femur kind of jutting out in your hands, and Minervina kind of takes a quizzical look at the pile of bones that is now building up at in this hallway here as you clear out the central chamber. And Minervina kind of gives you a bit of a double look, at the pile of bones and back to you and back to the pile of bones and back to you. And she's kind of like shakes her head for a second, and she's like, some cleaning you're doing there.
Yeah. I'll kind of enter my arms to be like, I'm not quite sure what to do with this yet. Maybe it might not be the best to just destroy it. And then I guess I'll I was gonna invite her to what was it? The races.
The races of the
Bad with
Hippodrome.
names.
Yeah.
The Hippodrome.
So you kind of I guess dust off
Broach
the
subject. I've been invited.
Yeah. Rapidly switching the subject from corpse disposal to a. You know what? I'm gonna have to ask you to make a social roll, because that's a pretty rough transition to make from how do I dispose of these corpses to, hey, would you like to go to the races with me? Let's see how well you manage to make that that transition in the conversation there. Why don't you I guess it's maybe persuasion, maybe socialize. I could see either one.
Okay.
Probably manipulation and persuasion. I feel like be most appropriate, unless you guys can think of something else.
I'm okay with persuasion, but maybe presence. It's the same dot rating. I just don't like the idea of calling it manipulation.
What? You can. It's fine to manipulate people.
Yeah. But anyway, once you go ahead and give me that presence and persuasion, let's see how charming you can be with a pile of corpses next to you.
I'm not horrible. I
Like
got it a
A
success.
single success. It's not a great segue, but it's a segue, and it's enough.
It could have been worse.
It could have been worse. I would have loved to have seen a dramatic failure on that.
oh man.
But nonetheless,
Lighten the mood. Something else. It's something else to talk about.
yeah, something that's not the pile of corpses in front of you. And the abrupt transition kind of like pauses Minervina for a moment. It's a little jarring, but she goes with it. She's like, sure, yeah, of course, I'd love to.
And well, I'm glad to hear that. And I think I'll ask her. Is there anything she's searching for in her? Like, I guess let's hear, because I know about her dream. She was searching for meaning, right?
Yeah, she'd been experiencing, these visions. They've proved themselves, prophetic before. She mentioned that she'd seen the two of you in her dreams, hence why she didn't, panic when you had broken her out of that prison. But she doesn't have the greatest grasp of these visions. She doesn't understand them in their entirely. Sometimes it's just symbols and images that the meaning is difficult to parse, as it were, omens that she doesn't per se have the skills or the talents to properly decipher.
Well, I guess you know what, maybe I'll try to like guide her out of the tomb, away from the dead bodies.
Let's talk not in front of the mound of corpses. That's a great idea. All right.
And I'll mention to her I found something that I believe might be connected to her.
All right, and I'm assuming you intend to show her the
finger, yeah.
Finger. And with
Wanna
that,
see a finger?
pull my finger. No. You flash Minervina this perfectly sculpted, albeit broken, piece of a finger, and you can quite plainly see Minervina's eyes dilating as you see that recollection, like that aha moment flash before her, as if she's seen this finger, this piece 1,000 times before. And on that note, with that, we are going to bring this session of Oceans of Eternity to a close. And next time we shall pick up as our merry Mirette, with perhaps some unexpected company, goes to crash the White Jackal's party, as it were. Yes, as we make our way to the Hippodrome to the races, and see what else White Jackal has to say. But anyway,
My 4+ friends, like,
yeah, we
those
brought,
alright?
brought all these friends around. I hope it's okay. None of this was discussed beforehand, but you just have to deal with it. Anyway, checking in with you guys. How, what's going on in your character's, head as this session comes to a close? What are they thinking of, and how are you guys doing?
Doing alright. Session was a bit slower than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to hit the Hippodrome this session, but it seems that's going to be next session. Yeah. But otherwise, I was having fun.
Zavlus or Prez, what are you guys doing? And what's going on in your character's noggins?
Yeah, I'm feeling very good. Glad we finally got my inheritor some help.
And you got a lead.
Yeah, another lead, and then also, yeah, just good to connect more people. I'm curious to learn more about this Alexia person. and figure out what the exact history between them used to be. But yeah, otherwise I'm pretty excited for next session.
All right. Zavlos.
Well, I guess clearly my connection with Minervina goes pretty deep. And now I am stuck in the infinite battle to go down the side quest of Minervina and the Bible and doing these other things that are useful for the group.
Yes, the classic pull between what's interesting for you and what's best for everyone.
I did get the tomb cleaned up a little bit.
There you go. You made.
Somebody had to do it.
Yeah, someone had to clear out the corpses. It might as well be
Wasn't
you.
gonna be me. Wow, yeah.
And,
If I was in charge of that, it would have been me trying to find somebody else to clean out the tomb.
and how are you doing, Zavlos?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm just, yeah, both in player and out of game. I am torn between the side quest and the main mission.
So many things to do. Oh, and it's only going to get worse once your judge starts having a say in what it wants you to do. Decisions. But anyway, that's a concern for later down the line. But
future Nesseret.
yeah,
you'll figure it out.
Future you guys problems. Anyway, thanks again to you guys for joining me today. Hope you guys had fun. Thanks to everyone else who's tuned into us today. Thanks for listening. Hope you stick around. And also thanks to Onyx Path for having us on their platform here. And again, thanks to Tabletop Audio, as I've been using their background here. Lastly, just some other things to touch on. The OGL sale over at Indie Press Revolution is still going on, I believe, so check that out if you haven't already. And there's also the Onyx Path Game Night, which is on the last Friday of the month, so there's still some time to get on board with that if you want to try out some of Onyx Path games. And lastly, I know we kind of touched on it before, and it's over now, but the crowdfunding, the Kickstarter for Realms of Pugmire 2E, was a resounding success. I believe they raised like 65k out of a 30k goal, so pretty solid work there. And thanks to any of you guys listening that happened to chip in to that Kickstarter and make that possible. Anyway, thanks again for everyone for joining us, for being here today. Hope to see you guys on the next episode. Take care.
Later.